You didn't survive everything you went through just to remain the same. Take a deep breath and really hear this: the hardest part is over. The season that felt like it would never end has ended. The storm that tried to convince you that you were weak has already passed. You may still see a few dark clouds in the distance, but they no longer have permission to pour over your life. There was a time when you wondered if you would break. You smiled in public, but wrestled in private. You showed up for others while secretly asking God how much longer you could keep carrying the weight. The nights were the heaviest. When everything became quiet, the thoughts grew loud. Questions echoed in your mind. Why is this happening? Did I miss something? Did I disappoint God? But even in those silent battles, you were not abandoned. Something powerful was happening beneath the surface. What felt like pressure was actually preparation. What felt like isolation was protection. You thought you were being pushed aside, but you were being set apart. There is a difference. When you are set apart, it can feel lonely. Friends drift away. Certain doors close without explanation. Plans fall through. But what you didn't realize is that not every closed door is rejection. Some doors shut because what's on the other side isn't aligned with your future. You were being redirected. Think about the moments that hurt the most. The relationship that ended unexpectedly. The opportunity that slipped through your hands. The people who misunderstood you. At the time, it felt like loss. Now look again. If those things had remained, would you have grown the way you did? Would you have discovered your strength? Would you have developed the resilience you now carry? Pain has a way of revealing what comfort hides. You didn't come out of that season empty. You came out refined. You learned how to pray when you didn't feel spiritual. You learned how to stand when your legs were shaking. You learned how to keep believing even when there was no visible evidence that anything was changing. That kind of faith transforms a person. And here is the shift: you are no longer in survival mode. There was a time when you woke up bracing yourself for the next problem. You anticipated disappointment. You expected something to go wrong. You guarded your heart because you didn't want to be blindsided again. But that constant tension was never meant to be permanent. You were surviving, yes, but now you are stepping into something deeper than survival. You are stepping into stability. Stability doesn't mean you will never face challenges again. It means challenges will no longer control your identity. They will not define your worth. They will not dictate your peace. You are not the same person who first entered that valley. You are stronger now, wiser, more discerning. There were patterns in your life that seemed to repeat, cycles that felt generational, habits that kept resurfacing. Maybe it was fear of abandonment. Maybe it was self-doubt. Maybe it was attracting the same type of unhealthy situation over and over again. You started to wonder if this was just your story. But what if you were chosen to interrupt that cycle? Sometimes the battle feels heavier because it isn't just about you. You were breaking something that had been lingering for years. That's why the pressure felt intense. That's why it seemed unfair. But you stayed. You kept showing up. You kept trying. And that matters more than you know. The version of you that cried on the floor, exhausted and confused, is not weak. That version is brave. Because even in tears, you didn't quit. Now imagine this: instead of waking up anxious, you wake up steady. Instead of expecting betrayal, you expect growth. Instead of replaying old wounds in your mind, you start envisioning new possibilities. This is not wishful thinking. This is the result of inner healing taking root. Healing is not loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace instead of proving a point. Sometimes it looks like staying silent instead of reacting. Sometimes it looks like walking away from what drains you, even if you once begged for it. You are learning that peace is more valuable than being understood by everyone. There were people who left your life. At the time, it felt personal. It felt like you weren't enough. But not everyone is assigned to walk with you forever. Some people are seasonal. They teach you something and then exit. That does not make you unworthy. It means your path is evolving. You are not behind in life. Comparison tried to steal your joy. Watching others succeed while you felt stuck was frustrating. You wondered if you were forgotten. But growth is not a race. Some seeds grow underground longer before they break through the surface. Just because your progress wasn't visible doesn't mean it wasn't happening. Roots grow in hidden places. And the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. There is a quiet confidence forming in you now. Not arrogance, not pride. Just a steady knowing that you are supported. You no longer need constant validation. You no longer feel the urge to chase every opportunity. What is meant for you will not require you to lose yourself. Read that again in your spirit. You used to overextend yourself to keep people happy. You used to shrink your dreams so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You used to silence your voice to avoid conflict. But that version of you is fading. You are rediscovering who you are without the weight of everyone else's expectations. And that is freedom. You are allowed to grow beyond who they remember. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to outgrow spaces that once felt like home. Growth is not betrayal, it is evolution. There were nights when you prayed for clarity, when you asked for a sign, when you whispered, God, if you're there, show me. Sometimes the answer didn't come the way you expected. Instead of immediate relief, you received endurance. Instead of instant clarity, you received patience. But now you can see why. You needed strength more than speed. If everything had shifted overnight, you wouldn't have developed the depth you now carry. You wouldn't have built the discernment that protects you today. You wouldn't recognize unhealthy patterns as quickly as you do now. The delay developed you. Now you are stepping into a season where things begin to align more naturally. Opportunities feel right instead of forced. Relationships feel safe instead of chaotic. Decisions feel clear instead of confusing. This is what alignment feels like. It feels calm. You don't have to fight for every blessing. You don't have to convince people of your value. You don't have to manipulate outcomes. When something is meant for you, it flows with a different kind of ease. Not because you didn't work for it, but because it's connected to your purpose. You were not created to live in constant anxiety. Your body was not designed to carry chronic stress. Your mind was not designed to replay trauma endlessly. The heaviness you carried for so long is lifting. You may not notice it all at once, but pay attention to the small changes. The way you respond differently, the way you recover faster, the way you no longer spiral as deeply as before. That is progress. And progress deserves acknowledgement. You are entering a chapter where you will breathe differently, where rest will not feel like guilt, where joy will not feel suspicious. You will learn to receive good things without waiting for them to disappear. That takes retraining. When you've experienced loss repeatedly, happiness can feel temporary. But not everything beautiful is fragile. Some blessings are meant to last. You have walked through enough fire. You have proven your resilience. Now it is time to experience restoration. Restoration doesn't always mean getting the exact same thing back. Sometimes it means receiving something better suited for who you are now. You are not who you were 5 years ago. You are not even who you were last year. You have evolved. And what's coming next will reflect that growth. Let yourself expect good again. Not in a naive way. Not ignoring reality, but with grounded hope. Hope that is rooted in experience. You have seen yourself survive things you once thought would destroy you. That memory alone should remind you of your strength. You are still here, still believing, still trying, still open. That matters. The chapter that hurt you is closing, not because it didn't matter, but because it completed its lesson. You learned what you needed to learn. You grew in ways you couldn't have imagined. Now it is time to turn the page, and this next chapter will not look like the last one. It will carry more peace, more clarity, more stability, more confidence. You are not going backward. You are not repeating the same cycle. You are moving forward with awareness and strength. Take a moment and really accept that. The worst is not chasing you anymore. You are stepping into something new. There was a battle happening around you that you could not see. Not every struggle in your life was physical. Not every delay was coincidence. Not every closed door was simply bad timing. Some of what you experienced was spiritual resistance. Some of it was a hidden war over your destiny. You thought you were just tired, but it wasn't only exhaustion. It was opposition. Have you ever noticed how certain seasons felt unusually heavy? You tried to move forward, and something kept blocking you. You prayed, but the answer felt delayed. You prepared, but opportunities slipped away at the last second. It felt like you were running in place. That wasn't random. There are moments in life when the pressure increases because your breakthrough is near. The resistance grows when your next level is approaching. Think about it, storms don't form over empty land. They gather where something significant is happening. And something significant has been happening in your life. The enemy does not attack what has no value. The level of opposition you faced was confirmation of your potential. The intensity of the pressure revealed the importance of your assignment. But here's the part you didn't see. You were covered. In the middle of confusion, you were shielded. In moments when you thought everything was falling apart, something unseen was holding it together. You may not have heard angels, but protection was present. You may not have seen signs in the sky, but divine covering was active. There were accidents that could have happened but didn't. There were betrayals that were forming but were exposed. There were plans against you that never succeeded. You thought it was luck. It wasn't. There is a reason you are still here. The nights when you cried and felt abandoned, you weren't alone. The mornings when anxiety sat heavy on your chest, you were still sustained. Even when your faith felt weak, you were being carried by something stronger than your doubt. Sometimes divine protection does not remove you from the storm, It stands with you inside it. You wanted the battle to disappear. Instead, you were given endurance. You wanted immediate rescue. Instead, you were strengthened. And while you were asking, "Why is this happening?" heaven was answering, "You are being fortified." Fortified for what? For influence, for impact, for elevation. The struggle was not punishment. It was preparation. You see, there is a difference between being attacked and being targeted. An attack can be random. Being targeted is intentional. And you were targeted because of what you carry. There is something about your spirit that disrupts darkness. There is something about your presence that shifts environments. Even when you feel ordinary, there is an anointing on your life that you may not fully recognize yet. Have you ever walked into a room and sensed tension shift? Have people ever opened up to you without knowing why? Have you felt called to something bigger, but couldn't quite explain it? That's not imagination. There is a calling on your life that required development. And development rarely happens in comfort. It happens in stretching seasons. It happens when you are forced to grow beyond what feels safe. Think about the pressure you survived. It didn't destroy you. It revealed you. The version of you that exists now is not the same as the one who entered that storm. You pray differently. You discern differently. You move differently. You no longer trust every voice. You no longer follow every opportunity blindly. That's growth. And growth is threatening to anything that wants you stagnant. There were moments when confusion clouded your judgment. When you couldn't tell if you were hearing fear or intuition. When you questioned your own discernment. That confusion was not always weakness. Sometimes it was warfare. Because if your clarity increases, your power increases. If your awareness expands, your choices shift. And once your choices shift, your entire future changes. That's why the resistance felt strategic. But here is the revelation. The warfare is decreasing. Not because you are no longer valuable, but because you have passed certain tests. You have matured in ways that closed doors to attacks that once worked against you. Now you step back and observe. You are not as easy to shake. That is spiritual strength. You may not call yourself strong. You may still see your flaws. But strength is not the absence of weakness. It is the refusal to quit despite it. And you refused to quit. Even when you were tired of praying. Even when you were tired of hoping. Even when you were tired of explaining yourself. You kept going. That persistence created a shift in the spiritual realm. There are battles you will never know you won because they were fought on your behalf. There were doors that closed to protect you from long-term harm. There were delays that prevented permanent damage. You were frustrated in the moment. Later, you will call it mercy. Sometimes protection looks like rejection. Sometimes favor looks like delay. Sometimes grace looks like interruption. And you experienced all three. You thought you were being overlooked. In reality, you were being hidden. Hidden from environments that would have drained you. Hidden from alliances that would have distracted you. Hidden until your foundation was strong enough to sustain visibility. Visibility without stability is dangerous. If you had received certain opportunities too early, the pressure would have crushed you. If certain relationships had lasted, they would have redirected your destiny. If some doors had opened prematurely, you would have walked into rooms you were not yet equipped to handle. Timing is protection. And now, something is shifting. The heaviness you carried is lifting because the intense warfare season is ending. Not that challenges will disappear entirely, but the constant resistance is easing. You will notice it in subtle ways. Peace will return to your thoughts. Clarity will return to your decisions. Energy will return to your body. You will feel less drained by things that once overwhelmed you. That is not coincidence. That is transition. You are moving from battle mode to building mode. For a long time, you were fighting to survive emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Now you will begin constructing something lasting. Vision will replace confusion. Strategy will replace reaction. Intention will replace impulse. You are not just surviving anymore. You are preparing to establish. Establish what? Stability, influence, legacy. The attacks were meant to make you shrink. Instead, they refined you. The pressure was meant to silence you. Instead, it clarified your voice. The isolation was meant to weaken you. Instead, it strengthened your connection to God. Now you hear differently. You discern quicker. You sense red flags earlier. That is not paranoia. That is wisdom developed through experience. You will not repeat the same mistakes, not because you are perfect, but because you are aware. Awareness changes everything. The same situations that once confused you now feel obvious. The same patterns that once trapped you now look transparent. You are no longer spiritually asleep. And once you awaken, you cannot go back to ignorance. This is why the season ahead will feel different. You will not be fighting the same battles. You will not be crying over the same wounds. You will not be questioning your worth the same way, because you now know who you are, not fully, but more than before. There is authority forming in you, quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to shout, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that walks into a room and carries peace. That authority was born in hidden battles. And here is the promise: what tried to break you will now build you. The lessons from betrayal will help you choose wiser relationships. The lessons from delay will help you appreciate divine timing. The lessons from hardship will help you lead others with compassion. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears, not the confusion, not the waiting. Every part of it shaped you. You are stepping into a season where the war behind the scenes decreases and the favor in front of you increases. Where alignment replaces resistance. Where doors open without manipulation. Where support comes without begging. But remember this: the victory did not start when the battle ended. It started when you chose to endure. You are not lucky. You are covered. You are not forgotten. You are appointed. You are not delayed. You are being aligned. And now that the hidden war has shifted, you can breathe again. Not because life will be perfect, but because you are protected. And what is meant for you is no longer under attack the way it once was. The season of constant warfare is closing, and the season of divine establishment is beginning. There is a reason certain people had to leave your life. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel fair. It didn't always make sense. Some exits were dramatic. Others were quiet and slow. Some relationships ended with conflict. Others faded without explanation. But no matter how it happened, the result was the same: separation. and separation can feel like loss. You questioned yourself. You replayed conversations in your mind. You wondered if you said too much or not enough. You asked whether you could have fixed it. You thought maybe if you had tried harder, adjusted more, tolerated longer, things would have stayed together. But what if they weren't meant to stay? Not every connection is assigned to your destiny. Some people are part of your history, not your future. And one of the hardest spiritual lessons to learn is this: attachment does not equal alignment. You can love someone deeply and still not be aligned with them. You can care about someone and still outgrow the dynamic. You can appreciate the memories and still accept the ending. Growth demands space. There are seasons when God begins to rearrange your environment. It feels uncomfortable because familiarity is being removed. The people you used to call first are no longer there. The group chats go quiet. The invitations slow down. The validation decreases. And in that silence, insecurity tries to speak. Maybe you're too much. Maybe you changed. Maybe you're the problem. But listen carefully, change was necessary. You were evolving. And not everyone is comfortable with evolution. When you begin to set boundaries, some people interpret it as distance. When you begin to heal, some people interpret it as pride. When you stop tolerating what once hurt you, some people interpret it as rejection. But boundaries are not betrayal. They are protection. You didn't lose people because you became worse. In many cases, you lost people because you became healthier. The version of you that tolerated chaos is not the version of you that values peace. The version of you that accepted bare minimum effort is not the version of you that now expects consistency. And that shift disrupts old dynamics. Have you noticed how certain relationships only worked when you were struggling? When you were doubting yourself? When you were smaller, quieter, less confident? But once you began stepping into clarity, once you started recognizing your worth, the dynamic changed. That's not coincidence. Some connections are rooted in shared wounds, not shared purpose. When you start healing, the bond weakens. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped bleeding. Separation is often a sign of elevation. Before promotion, there is pruning. Before expansion, there is cutting away. Trees don't grow stronger by holding onto dead branches. They grow stronger when what no longer produces life is removed. And some relationships had stopped producing life. You felt drained after certain conversations. You felt anxious before certain meetings. You felt misunderstood in spaces where you once felt accepted. That discomfort wasn't random. It was revelation. You were being shown what no longer fit. But letting go is painful, even when it's necessary. There were moments when loneliness hit hard, when you scrolled through memories, when you missed the way things used to be. And that's human. You are allowed to grieve what changed. You are allowed to miss who people used to be. You are allowed to feel the weight of transition. But don't confuse nostalgia with destiny. Just because something was good once does not mean it is meant to continue forever. Seasons change, and sometimes people are seasonal blessings, not lifetime assignments. There is also something deeper happening in this separation. You are being realigned. Realignment means your circle begins to reflect your future, not your past. Your conversations shift. Your interests expand. Your tolerance for drama decreases. Your desire for depth increases. You no longer crave noise. You crave substance. You no longer chase attention. You value intention. You no longer fear being alone. You fear being misaligned. That is maturity. In the past, you may have stayed connected out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of disappointing others. But fear is not a foundation for healthy relationships. Alignment is. Alignment feels different. It feels safe. It feels mutual. It feels balanced. There is effort on both sides. There is respect without begging. Your capacity would be full. Sometimes God removes people not as punishment, but as preparation. Preparation for what? For relationships that don't require you to shrink, for friendships that celebrate your growth, for partnerships that honor your boundaries, for mentors that stretch your vision. But before that arrives, there is a gap, and the gap is uncomfortable. The gap is where you learn who you are without constant input. The gap is where you rediscover your voice. The gap is where you stop performing and start becoming. You may feel like you're in between worlds right now, not fully connected to your past circle, not fully settled into your new one. That in-between space can feel isolating, but it is sacred, because in isolation, clarity grows. You start recognizing patterns you once ignored. You start noticing red flags earlier. You start trusting your intuition more. You begin asking better questions. Does this relationship feel peaceful? Does this connection align with my values? Do I feel energized or drained afterward? Those questions are evidence of growth. There were times when you over-explained yourself just to be understood. Times when you overextended just to keep peace. Times when you tolerated disrespect because you feared confrontation. But now you are different. You don't argue as quickly. You don't chase as desperately. You don't beg for consistency. You observe, and observation is powerful. Because when you observe, you see clearly. And when you see clearly, you choose wisely. And when you choose wisely, your future shifts. Separation was not designed to break your heart. It was designed to free it. Free it from comparison. Free it from competition. Free it from environments that kept you doubting your worth. You were not too sensitive. You were not too ambitious. You were not too spiritual. You were not too much. You were simply growing beyond what was familiar. And growth often looks like loss before it looks like gain. Think about the caterpillar. Transformation requires isolation. It enters a cocoon, hidden and alone. From the outside, it looks inactive. But inside, everything is changing. Cells are rearranging. Identity is shifting. You are in your cocoon season. It may look quiet from the outside. It may feel slow. But internally, transformation is happening. Your standards are rising. Your discernment is sharpening. Your emotional intelligence is deepening. And when you emerge, you will not fit in the spaces you once begged to stay in. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. The next relationships entering your life will reflect who you are becoming, not who you were surviving as. They will meet you at your healed level, not your wounded one. But you must release the old to receive the new. Holding on to expired connections delays divine appointments. Trying to resurrect dead dynamics drains energy meant for future partnerships. Let it go, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with understanding. Bless what was, release what ended. Trust what's coming. Because what's coming will not require you to fight for basic respect. It will not leave you guessing your worth. It will not make you question your value daily. It will align. This season of separation is not emptiness. It is alignment in progress. You are being repositioned socially, emotionally, spiritually. And when alignment completes its work, you will look back and realize the people who left made space for the people who stayed. Not everyone can go where you are going. Some connections were attached to your previous level, and as you elevate, certain attachments must fall away. It's not personal, it's directional. You are moving forward, and forward requires lightness. You cannot carry everyone into your next chapter. You cannot drag old energy into new doors. You cannot expect new fruit while holding onto dead branches. Trust the pruning. Trust the silence. Trust the gap. Because what feels like loneliness right now is actually preparation. And when the right people enter your life, you will feel the difference immediately. It will feel peaceful. It will feel mutual. It will feel aligned. And you will no longer question whether you belong. Because separation was never meant to isolate you permanently. It was meant to realign you completely. There was a moment when you almost gave up. Not necessarily on life, but on the dream, on the hope, on the idea that things would ever truly change. You reached a breaking point where pretending to be strong felt heavier than admitting you were tired. And that breaking point scared you. You're used to being the resilient one, the dependable one, the one others lean on. But in that private season, you felt empty. The motivation that once fueled you disappeared. The excitement you used to feel about your future dimmed. Even prayer felt repetitive. You weren't lazy. You weren't faithless. You were exhausted. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It comes from prolonged stress, from carrying silent battles, from being strong for too long without being poured into. And eventually your soul demands honesty. That breaking point was not weakness. It was revelation. Because for the first time, you stopped pretending everything was fine. You stopped performing strength. You stopped forcing smiles. You stopped saying, "I'm okay," when you weren't. And in that raw honesty, something shifted. You see, breakdowns often precede breakthroughs, but not in the cliché way people say it. The breakthrough is not always external. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes the real breakthrough is awareness. You became aware of what was draining you. You became aware of what was misaligned. You became aware of what you were tolerating that you no longer should. Before that moment, you were surviving on autopilot, moving through routines, showing up for obligations, meeting expectations. But inside, something felt disconnected. The breaking point forced you to confront that disconnection. It forced you to ask deeper questions. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to please? What do I actually want? What is God truly calling me toward? Those questions are uncomfortable, because once you ask them, you can't ignore the answers. You started noticing how often you compromised your peace to keep others comfortable. How often you silenced your intuition to avoid conflict. How often you postponed your own dreams to maintain stability. And slowly, you realized something profound. You had outgrown parts of your own life. Not everything, but enough to feel restless. Restlessness is not always rebellion. Sometimes it's divine prompting. It's the signal that you are no longer meant to remain where you are. The discomfort is not random, it is directional. But direction requires courage. Because once you acknowledge that you've outgrown something, you must decide whether to stay comfortable or step into uncertainty. And uncertainty is terrifying. The breaking point brought you face to face with fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of losing stability, fear of disappointing people. But it also revealed something stronger than fear, your capacity. You survived days you thought would crush you. You handled responsibilities, even while internally struggling. You kept moving, even when you felt emotionally fractured. That's not weakness, that's resilience. However, resilience without reflection leads to burnout. And burnout is what brought you to the edge. You were strong, but you were not replenished. You were capable, but you were not aligned. And alignment matters more than endurance, because you can endure something that is slowly destroying you. You can survive in environments that are shrinking your potential. You can maintain routines that are suffocating your calling. But survival is not the same as fulfillment. The breaking point made that clear. It showed you that continuing the same patterns would only deepen the emptiness. It forced you to choose growth over familiarity. It pushed you to confront truths you had postponed for years. You started setting boundaries. You started saying no. You started prioritizing rest. You started reevaluating relationships. You started praying differently, not just for blessings, but for clarity. Clarity changes everything. When you see clearly, you stop blaming yourself for everything. You recognize patterns that were never yours to fix. You identify cycles that were never yours to carry. You release guilt that was never yours to hold. And with that release, strength returns, but it's different this time. It's not performative strength, it's grounded strength. The kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that flows from conviction. Your awakening didn't come with fireworks, it came with quiet decisions. Small shifts, subtle changes in how you respond. You stopped reacting impulsively. You paused before committing. You listened to your intuition instead of dismissing it. That's awakening. It's not loud, it's intentional. And with intentionality came peace. Not constant peace, but increasing peace. The chaos that once dominated your thoughts began to quiet. The overthinking reduced. The urgency softened. You realized that not everything requires your energy. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every opinion deserves your attention. That awareness protects you. But awakening also brings grief. Because as you evolve, you see clearly what you once ignored. You recognize how long you stayed in spaces that limited you. You acknowledge how often you settled. And that realization can sting. Don't shame yourself for what you didn't know. You were operating with the awareness you had at the time. Growth means your awareness expanded, not that your past self was foolish. Be gentle with who you were. That version of you was doing the best they could. And that version survived long enough to become this version. Now, you are different. You don't chase the same validation. You don't crave the same attention. You don't tolerate the same treatment. You value peace over popularity. You value purpose over pressure. You value alignment over appearance. And that shift is powerful. Because when you awaken, You begin designing your life intentionally instead of inheriting it passively. You question traditions. You evaluate expectations. You redefine success. Success is no longer just external achievement. It's internal stability. It's waking up without dread. It's going to bed without regret. It's building something that aligns with your values. Your breaking point cleared the fog. It stripped away illusions. It dismantled false identities. It removed the pressure to be everything for everyone. It showed you that your worth is not tied to productivity, performance, or people's approval. You are valuable because you exist, not because you achieve, not because you impress, not because you overextend. That truth is freeing, and with freedom comes courage. Courage to pursue ideas that once felt unrealistic. Courage to walk away from dynamics that feel draining. Courage to start again if necessary. You may not have all the answers yet. Awakening does not mean instant certainty, but you have direction. And direction is enough for the next step. The breaking point was not the end of you. It was the end of pretending, the end of shrinking, the end of self-abandonment, the end of tolerating what wounded you. And in its place, a new foundation is forming. One built on authenticity, one built on discernment, one built on spiritual awareness. You are no longer asleep to your own needs. You are no longer disconnected from your own voice. You are no longer ignoring the quiet nudges guiding you forward. That guidance will become stronger. The more you honor your awakening, the clearer your path will feel. The more you trust your discernment, the less confusion will dominate you. The more you prioritize alignment, the more doors will open naturally. Your breaking point became your awakening because it forced honesty. And honesty births transformation. You didn't fall apart. You peeled away what was false. And what remains is stronger, wiser, and more aligned than ever before. This is not the season where you collapse under pressure. This is the season where you rebuild with intention. The breaking point did not destroy you. It revealed you. And now that you see clearly, you will never go back to who you were before, because awakening changes everything. You are not who you were a year ago, not mentally, not spiritually, not emotionally. Something has shifted. The battles didn't destroy you. The separation didn't empty you. The breaking point didn't end you. Instead, all of it prepared you for this moment, the moment of emergence. Emergence is different from arrival. Arrival is loud, it's visible, it's celebrated. Emergence is quieter, it's internal first. It's the moment you realize you're no longer waiting to become, you already are. For so long, you felt like you were in preparation mode. Learning, healing, surviving, growing in hidden places. Watching others move ahead while you stayed in what felt like delay. But delay was not denial. You were being developed. There were character traits forming in you that success alone could never teach. Patience, discernment, emotional control, spiritual depth. These qualities were forged in seasons no one applauded. And now you carry them naturally. You don't react as quickly. You don't panic as easily. You don't chase as desperately. You move with intention. That is emergence. You've entered a season where you are no longer seeking identity. You are expressing it. The confusion that once clouded your path is lifting. The insecurity that once made you shrink is loosening its grip. You are starting to trust yourself. Not in arrogance, not in ego, but in alignment. There is a quiet confidence growing inside you. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply knows. You know what feels right. You know what feels wrong. You know what aligns. You know what drains. And that awareness protects your next chapter. This new season will not look like the old one. You will not be fighting constant invisible battles. You will not be questioning your worth daily. You will not be begging for spaces that don't recognize your value. Instead, you will attract what aligns with who you've become. Opportunities will feel smoother. Conversations will feel intentional. Connections will feel mutual. Not perfect, but aligned. Emergence doesn't mean there will be no challenges. It means you will respond differently to them. The same storm that once shook your identity will now test your strategy. The same pressure that once overwhelmed you will now refine your focus. Because you are stronger now. Stronger in discernment. Stronger in boundaries. Stronger in faith. There was a time when you prayed only for escape. God, remove this. God, fix that. God, change them. But now your prayers are different. Now you pray for wisdom, for clarity, for alignment, for courage to act when doors open. That shift in prayer reveals growth. You are no longer just asking for rescue. You are preparing for responsibility, and responsibility is coming. There are ideas inside you that are ready to be birthed. Projects you postponed. Visions you doubted. Talents you minimized. This is the season where you stop dismissing them. The world does not need a smaller version of you. It needs the refined version of you. The version that survived heartbreak. The version that healed in silence. The version that faced fear and kept moving. You carry depth now. Depth changes how you speak, how you lead, how you love, how you build. This emergence is not about proving your past wrong. It's about honoring your growth. You don't need revenge success. You don't need validation from those who doubted you. You don't need applause from people who misunderstood you. You need alignment. And alignment is already forming. You may notice doors opening in subtle ways. A new idea gaining traction. A new connection feeling divinely timed. A new opportunity arriving without manipulation. Pay attention. This is not coincidence. This is confirmation. You are stepping into an appointed season. An appointed season means timing meets readiness. It means what once felt premature now feels possible. It means what once intimidated you now challenges you in the right way. But here's the key: you must move. Emergence requires action. You cannot stay hidden when it's time to be seen. You cannot keep shrinking when it's time to expand. You cannot keep doubting when clarity has been given. Fear will try to resurface. Are you really ready? What if you fail? What if this is too big? But remember, the same voice of fear spoke before every growth season, and every time you grew anyway. You don't need to feel fully confident to move forward. You only need obedience to the next step. One decision, one conversation, one application, one act of courage. Momentum will follow movement. And as you move, you will notice something powerful. The resistance that once blocked you feels weaker. The obstacles that once delayed you clear faster. The confusion that once overwhelmed you settles quicker. That's because you are aligned. Alignment accelerates. When your internal world matches your external actions, progress becomes smoother. When your values match your environment, peace increases. When your faith matches your decisions, clarity strengthens. You are no longer fragmented. You are integrated. The person you are in private is becoming the person you present in public. There is less pretending, less performing, less proving. That authenticity is magnetic. People will begin to sense your steadiness. They will trust your perspective. They will seek your counsel, not because you claim authority, but because you carry experience. Experience shaped you. The tears shaped you. The waiting shaped you. The silence shaped you. The loneliness shaped you. None of it was wasted. In fact, those very seasons will become the foundation of your influence. You will speak from lived truth, not theory. You will lead from compassion, not ego. You will build from wisdom, not impulse. And that foundation will sustain what is coming. Because what is coming is expansion. Expansion of impact. Expansion of visibility. Expansion of responsibility. Expansion of opportunity. But expansion without grounding leads to collapse. That's why the preparation took so long. That's why the hidden seasons were necessary. That's why the battles refined you first. Now, you can handle what once would have overwhelmed you. You can manage success without losing humility. You can navigate attention without losing identity. You can build influence without losing integrity. That is emergence. You are not stepping into perfection. You are stepping into purpose. Purpose does not mean everything will be easy. It means everything will be meaningful. Even challenges will serve development. Even delays will serve strategy. Even setbacks will carry lessons. And you won't interpret every obstacle as rejection anymore. You will see it as redirection when necessary. Your mindset has matured. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question alone shifts your entire trajectory. The season ahead will require boldness. Not reckless boldness, intentional boldness. Speaking when it's uncomfortable. Acting when it's intimidating. Trusting when it's uncertain. But you are capable. Look at what you've already survived. Look at what you've already endured. Look at how far you've already come. The old you would not recognize the strength you now carry. And the future version of you is waiting for you to step fully into this moment. So step into rooms you once feared. Step into conversations you once avoided. Step into leadership you once doubted. Step into visibility you once resisted. This is not arrogance. This is appointment. You were not preserved by accident. You were not refined by coincidence. You were not protected without purpose. Everything aligned to bring you here. And now the emergence is undeniable. You are ready. Not because you feel no fear. Not because you have all the answers. Not because the path is perfectly clear. But because you have grown into the kind of person who can figure it out along the way. The waiting season is ending. The becoming season is here. And you are no longer preparing to rise. You are rising.